Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Ancient Mysteries Unearthed. I'm your host, Chris Noble, and today we are traveling down to South Africa, and we are going to be exploring some very interesting anomalies, some very interesting mysteries, but then expanding out from South Africa to really who we are as a species and what does that mean for us today in this very interesting time, very chaotic time. And trust me when I say it all does connect. And interestingly enough, for me personally, one of the people that I got to be introduced to via the internet many, many, many years ago that helped me with my own awakening and my own journey with coming to, terms with who are we as a species and what is our past? And then more importantly, what does that even mean for us today in this day and age? So this individual, Michael Tellinger, is one of the first people I've actually come across in my life that really opened up my eyes to these questions of who are we and where do we come from and why is that actually very, very important? Because to be honest, the story we've been given is a complete load of BS. And we need to now discover and look into the real story of who we are. So, to give you a little background on Michael, Michael is a scientist. He's an explorer. He's also an internationally acclaimed author, very, very multifaceted individual, and also has a ton of fantastic books you can find on his website, or, of course, in the description below. We'll have all of Michael's information at the end of the episode as well, but also in the description at any point. Please feel free to check it out. Now, Michael also does these amazing lectures. This is where I first discovered Michael was a lecture on YouTube for well over 10 years ago that had several million views. And, for most of you watching and listening, lectures don't get a lot of views. Okay. And for Michael to get well over millions of views on a lecture, it's because it was mind blowing information. And Michael has a great way of delivering it as well in a way that actually lands and makes sense and feels grounded. So these lectures, I also highly recommend checking out on YouTube because they're quite eye-opening and quite interesting. But what I also love about Michael is that he not only is going to share a lot of this information today on the episode, but he has an exit strategy. He has a way that we can actually take this information and utilize it for today, and that is really through his Ubuntu liberation movement, essentially of unity and higher consciousness. And so Michael has a lot of amazing work in that area that we will touch on towards the end of the episode. But just a little bit more on Michael. He's also essentially the main authority in South Africa on the vanished civilizations of South Africa, the Stone Circle ruins, which we'll talk about today, which is where I first discovered Michael and went to South Africa. I got to experience these for myself in real life. And let me tell you, there's some serious magic down there to be experienced. And then he's also an expert on the origins of humankind, as well as other things like resonance, cymatics, frequency, and sound, which all connect. Trust me, it all connects. And we'll get into all that today. So, without any further ado, I would love to bring Michael Tellinger onto the show right now. Michael, how are you doing today?
Excellent. Very well. Thank you, Chris. Good to see you, and thank you for that lovely intro.
Oh, my absolute pleasure. It's so great to see you again. And for the audience watching and listening, Michael, this is the first time I've really chatted with Michael in quite a few years. And I was so lucky to have gone to his amazing museum down in South Africa back in, I believe it was 2018, and just got to have 2 weeks of magic, exploring the Stone Circle ruins, meditating in places like Adam's Calendar. And it really blew my mind and it changed my life for the better, Michael. And I really appreciate it. I would love for you to just maybe give our audience a little background on yourself. And a specific question for you is, what was the first moment in your life where you had this major awakening and an aha moment of, oh my gosh, what we were told is not the truth about who we are? Do you have a moment or remember roughly like when your first awakening to this was?
Yeah, Chris, everybody, I guess, when they get to this point that they can discuss the issues that we're discussing here and the subject and the topics, uh, so every one of us have our own moment of awakening where we suddenly, when the penny drops and you go, hold on, there's a whole another story here that I need to pay attention to. And for me, it was actually several moments like that, several aha moments. So the first time that I realized that we may not be alone and that there might be lots of other activity in the universe and a whole lot of other stuff that the mainstream science doesn't see for what it should be seen and identified for what it's telling us. That was Eric von Daniken's book, Chariots of the Gods. So I was first year university student. I was 19, and I'll never forget that day. I was lying by the pool. It was a weekend. I was lying by the pool at men's res, and I can't even remember what I was doing, talking crap to my buddies, and maybe probably drinking beer or whatever what 19-year-old guys at university do, right? And somebody came from behind. I was lying on one of those stretchers by the pool, and it was an awesome res, by the way, men's res, and and they came from behind and they literally dropped over my shoulder, dropped into my lap, Chariots of the Gods. It was like a strange, bizarre situation, and all I heard, I can't even remember who it was, and they just dropped this book in my lap and said, "Take a look at this. I think you'll enjoy this." And I sort of looked and I looked back and I can't remember who did it. And I picked up the book and that was it. I was gone. Chariots of the Gods, man. That was it. 19 years old. Boom. Eyes wide open. And that was my first aha moment. And then 11 years later, obviously having absorbed that. Once you absorb that, it's in your DNA. You can't get rid of it, and it ferments, and it starts to connect subconsciously, make connections that you often don't even realize as you learn. So I went through university. I studied Bachelor of Pharmacy at Wits University Medical School in Johannesburg. That's when it was still one of the great universities in the world. Some of the best doctors in the world come from that university. I was at the medical school. A lot of those doctors are actually in Canada now, South African doctors, and in America and in Australia. Anyway, and when I graduated, so I did 5 years at university study, or 4 years, and then 1 year practical in a pharmaceutical environment, and a lot of that stuff that I read in Chariots of the Gods connected to the things that you study, anatomy, etc. So it was a fascinating catalyst for me. And then, literally 11 years later, on my 30th birthday, there was another reawakening when a sort of a girlfriend of mine at the time left me a birthday present for my 30th birthday at my house in Johannesburg. At the time, I owned a pharmacy. I just opened a little pharmacy and I owned a little pharmacy, and I came home and there was this birthday present against my door. That's when you could still leave. You could still leave a birthday present for someone at their door on the street and nobody would steal it. Yeah. And there was this beautifully wrapped birthday present, happy birthday, and there was this book. And it was William Bramley's Gods of Eden. And that was a whole another mind-blowing to remind me of the Chariots of the Gods, and it just took me further. And then literally, I read that in a week or in a few days, I can't remember. And then I went on a journey, and then I discovered Zachariah Sitchin, and that was a whole, it was just compacted roller coaster ride of awakening and opening your mind and realizing that there's so much more to our history and our origins that we are taught at school and are showed in on History Channel and so forth. So that's pretty much my journey. And then all of that got solidified in 2004 in Johannesburg. After I just moved back from Cape Town. I stayed in Cape Town for about 6 years. I moved back to Joburg and I started to write a book. I'd realized that I had all this accumulated knowledge. By then, I'd read, hundreds of books from science and physics and history and genetics and all the stuff made together with Sitchin and all the other esoteric books on our human origins. And then I decided I needed to write a book, and I had the name from the word go, Slave Species of God, because I realized that there was a huge misunderstanding in the greater population, the difference between God with a big G, the creator of the universe, and the God with a big G, and the gods with a small g. These malicious, malevolent beings that had higher knowledge and the ability to travel, through space or whatever, and travel through time or who knows what, wormholes and stargates, and that were on Earth at various times throughout our global history, our world history. And there's a big difference between these beings that we often call gods in mythology and God with a big G. So that's how I realized, let me put this together. And the quest for gold was obviously, by then I realized that gold was one of the central themes and all that. So I thought, well, let me sit down and write a book. And that turned out to be Slave Species of God. And on the cover, I wrote God with a small g, just to make a point. And boy, did that cause confusion, because a lot of the Christians, it was actually all about God. And so it was actually supporting creation, supporting Christianity. But because I spelled God with a small g, making a reference to the gods with a small g, so that it would attract attention, it created an interesting reaction. And then when people realized why it was spelled with a small g, they went, wow, okay, I get it.
It's so interesting, right? Because it's when we think about our past and we look into history, and we're taught this in school, and it's delivered in such a nonchalant way where yes, and then the pantheon of gods in Greece, and then in the Roman pantheon of gods, and then we go to India and the Vedas, and we've got hundreds of gods, and we've got this and we've got that, and you actually just take a moment out of that and step back and take the, let's say, the Van Donigan perspective or the Sitchin perspective, and just go, wait a minute, like what are these gods even doing, and who are they, and why are they prevalent throughout every major culture around the entire world at one point or another? There's gods in every single culture. They talk about beings from the sky. We got, indigenous cultures like the Hopi here in North America that talk about the sky people. And it's crazy when you look into our history too, that things like genetics, things like wormholes and quantum physics are interspersed throughout so much of it. And if you actually look at our past with that lens, all of a sudden you'll see things that connect. And one of the more interesting areas of study that I've really been interested in, and I was kind of just getting into this area of study when we connected back in 2018 in South Africa, was the study of cymatics and vibration. And cymatics, for those that don't know, is essentially what vibration and frequency looks like manifested physically. So the classic example is sand or salt on a wooden, or excuse me, a metal plate, and then they put a speaker underneath. I've done this myself in like my garage. It's really fun, actually, a fun experiment. And you put a speaker underneath, and then you throw a tone generator online on your computer or whatever it is through it to a speaker and generate frequencies and see what shapes take place on the metal sheet or in water as well. It's really interesting. So when we were in South Africa, Michael was showing us these stone circle ruins, and that's what I want to get into next, is this fascinating phenomenon that you were really probably the most vocal about in terms of getting people's attention to this fact that there's literally millions of these ruins littered across the south of the African continent. What are the stone circle ruins, Michael? Especially now, we're talking in 2025. What are the stone circle ruins, and what do you think their significance is regarding our human origins?
Yeah, it's a very big story, Chris. As you know, you were here, so you experienced a little bit of it yourself over a 2 week period. Um, was it with your group that we went and explored the gold mine next to Adams Calendar?
Yes, it
Yeah,
was.
okay. Yeah. That's still, I still recall that, and
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 we
you know
found
realize that.
And we
Yeah.
found a Taurus stone, and Taurus stones. Michael's got an amazing story. We might do a quick condensed version of today on the episode, where these were donut-shaped stones that are emitting what, gigahertz frequencies. I mean, here we go. We'll grab one.
I've got
So
one right here. I've
no,
got
it's
one right here because I brought them from the museum because I'm about to start making some
oh wow.
videos. This is the tourist stone that crashed the TSA security system at Doha, Qatar International Airport in 2013. Yeah, this is a big deal. So just jump. People might be confused if they don't know the story, but that is the stone that crashed the TSA security system at the Doha, Qatar International Airport.
So okay, before we get into the stone circle ruins, we need to tell the story now. So this story, just to condense it a little bit for us, Michael, but essentially this story, what I take away from it is it just proves that a lot of this ancient technology and a lot of these ancient stone tools, quote unquote, might be far more sophisticated than we ever thought possible because of the energy that is being emitted from them, um, and maybe multiple types of purposes. I've done an episode actually on coral castles and Ed Leeds Skull and his. We've talked. I know you talk about this a lot, Michael, where these kids witnessed him using what looked like ice cream cone shaped stone tools to levitate megalithic stones. So we're talking technology, but in a way that we are not familiar because it's not shiny and metallic and iPhone slick. It's very different. So what's the story of you crashing an entire security system at this airport with a stone, basically?
Well, first of all, the stone circle ruins are are first of all, there are about 10 million of them in southern Africa. There's a huge number, so it is unquestionably the largest concentration of ancient ruins found anywhere on Earth. I don't know anywhere else where there is such large number of ancient ruins all together. And what it's like. You were here, and when you start looking at them from the aerial photographs, you see that stone circles. Each one is completely unique. Each one represents a sound frequency that comes out of the earth at that specific point, and that's why they connected to cymatics and the study of sound and how sound manifests physical form. It's in a way. Every stone circle is like a giant version of when you do a cymatics experiment in your garage and you throw some sand or some rice on a metal plate and you put a sound frequency through it and it gives you these beautiful, perfect shapes. Every frequency has its own unique shape, and the same for stone circles. Every stone circle has its own unique shape because it's formed by the sound frequency that comes out of the ground at that specific point. And that took years to discover. I just rattled it off like that took at least 5 years to realize and discover that and get the proof and the evidence for that. And then so those stone circles are all connected to each other with these channels. And the channels aren't walkways or pathways, as our archaeologists claim in all the books they keep writing and articles they give to the media. It's all nonsense. These are channels because they connect to share the energy. So every stone circle generates energy. The walls of these stone circles radiate sound frequencies into the gigahertz. Those sound frequencies are turned into magnetic fields and electromagnetic fields, and they literally generate megahertz of frequencies. I mean, like radio stations, and so all connected together. We've got excuse me, we've got a giant energy generating device, a huge network of millions of stone circles that are all individual energy generating devices that are connected to each other, generating an unimaginable amount of energy collectively. So that's what it is. And among these ruins, you find all these interesting tools and artifacts. Besides the fossilized body parts, which you saw by the time you came here, because in January 2018, the first group that I had here, that's when the penny dropped that the weird shaped stones that are in my museum are not just weird shaped stones. That they've got these strange shapes because they're actually fossilized body parts of all kinds of creatures. And once your eyes open to that, then suddenly you go, oh my God, it's so obvious to see it. This is not a stone. This is a piece of an anatomical piece of some body, of whether it's a leg or a shoulder or a heart or a lung or a finger, a part of a finger or a tooth. So, my museum is filled with these fossilized body parts of all kinds of creatures, humanoids, animals, and all shapes as well. Reptilians with reptilian skin. And some of that reptilian skin, if you recall, I mean, huge. That one scale is like this size, on a piece that has got these huge scales. So some of these creatures were probably very big, and including giants, because one of them is actually a petrified, the front part of a small toe of a giant. This little first. And we know it is because of I can go into the details why and how we know, but if I have to explain everything, we won't get off the the first page of this discussion. So scattered among all these stone circle ruins are also these other tools and artifacts besides the fossilized body parts, and some of these tools and artifacts are these Taurus stones, and you can see it's got this little white note that says bottom. And that is there because we dowsed it, and we measured it with dowsing rods, with all kinds of devices, with cell phone EMF readers that show you that they emit electromagnetic fields, And wow, even having it under my chin here, I can actually feel the energy coming up, and it's tightening my muscles under my ear, my jaw muscles here. That's amazing. As I lift it up, I put it down here because it's emitting energy upwards, and I can actually feel it tightening my jaw. It's wild. So we now know that these Taurus stones are very powerful energy generating devices. 1 second.
And I can attest to that. I'll just say before Michael comes back, we were when I was in his museum and we're around these different stones. It's almost like you put your hand closer and closer, and it's like you can feel this static, almost electricity, sometimes feeling from some of these stones. And another interesting thing to mention about these stones that are, like we were discovering, very peculiar looking, and we realized later are essentially mud fossils, are fossilized body parts, which still is pretty amazing to think of, and then to build with these stones, to build with body parts is interesting as well. But these
Yeah.
stones, a little morbid, but also a little interesting, because here's the thing: is these stones, at least some of them, not all of them, but certain ones ring like bells. They're resonant stones, and that's another interesting
Yeah.
property, right?
Yeah, so what you brought up there, Chris, is very important because if you recall clearly, some of the stone walls in the stone circles, you can clearly see that some more recent civilization came along and they added stones, a layer of stones on top of the original stone wall. You can clearly see
Repurpose. Yeah.
where the new stones were added.
Yeah.
So you know that we know that the original stone circles were not built for people or for cows. They're a machine. It's a giant energy generating machine. In fact, I'm not going to go into the detail, but 2 days ago, I got an email from, I think he's Canadian, and he does remote viewing, and he emailed me an entire breakdown of his remote viewing session that he does with AI. So he does remote viewing with AI. And what he sent me blew my mind. And I think it must have blown his mind when he got the results that what AI gave him, because it literally described exactly what I've been saying about the stone circles. And this, it blew my mind because I've tested the AI. I've tested from Grok to 2 or 3 other AIs to ask them, what are the stone circles about? And I can clearly see that the AI doesn't have enough information about the stone circle. So it's still fishing, and it mentions me. All of the AI mentioned me immediately, but they still say that I am speculating and I claim this. And while mainstream media, mainstream academia says this, so it still leans towards the side of mainstream academia. That's AI. This AI with remote viewing had completely the opposite take. It didn't even come close to. It literally regurgitated everything I've been saying about these stone circles being energy generating devices, that they almost are. You can almost say that they're conscious. It's almost like they create physical forms in the energetic fields above them and so forth. It's detailed information. It blew my mind. So to come back to the Taurus stones, I started to collect these Taurus stones and cone-shaped tools, which I don't have examples here, but if you go onto my website, you'll see cone-shaped tools. Um, oh, actually, I've got. Um, where are they?
It's like show and tell we
Uh,
got here today.
yeah,
Show
yeah.
and
So I
tell.
just happen to have these.
That's
These
great.
these are images that are normally in my museum. Here's some cone-shaped tools that are on display in Egypt. These are used in all kinds of processes. Here's an image of a Sumerian entity healing somebody with cone-shaped tools. Um, Here is a display of cone-shaped tools in Egypt at a museum, together with magnetron shapes. Look at those cone-shaped tools next to magnetrons. Now, the magnetrons are highly significant because it's the stone circles or the cymatic patterns. Some of the stone circles, as you know, are in the shape of magnetrons, very clearly. And here you've got, cone-shaped tools in ancient civilizations, uh, you know, being used, and statues all over the place. So it became a very significant discovery that nobody was talking about, the significance of cone-shaped tools in ancient times. And then I discovered that the cone-shaped tools, these are on display in the Rosicrucian Museum in San Jose. from Sumeria, these cone-shaped tools that have got cuneiform text written all over them that tell you that these cone-shaped tools were used in the constructions of the temples in Sumer. Like, and you go, wow. All right. So that's important. So they obviously, I've concluded that they are Caesar beam devices that they actually generate through the cone and speeding up of the sound frequencies, that the sound speeds up. And by the time it exits the tip of the cone, it moves at hypersound speeds. In other words, it moves faster than the speed of light. And now people might be confused by that because you first need to understand what happens at the 0 point in the toroidal fields. And that's why these torus tones are so important. Have discovered them and understand how powerful they are. I will show you evidence now how they generate energy. While we know they generate energy, first of all, we measure it with devices, so it's not rocket science. But here is that actually, this is me handing the stone to Nassim Haramein in Hawaii, on Kauai, and that's the same stone after it crashed the TSA security system and nearly had me arrested. Um, and then I brought it back about 2 or 3 years later. But here's some thermal images from, I can't remember when they were taken, but you can clearly see that the one side is colder and the other side is hotter. There's a 20 degrees Celsius difference from the one side to the other. So we know that they generate energy. They suck in the ambient frequencies from the one side and they push it out the other side. That is why you'll see it's got bottom written on the one side of the stone, because that's the side that sucks energy. So we put that facing down in the museum. Otherwise, it sucks all the energy out. If you walk in there with all these torus stones sucking energy, you literally walk in there and within five minutes in the museum, you feel you want to pass out because it just depletes your energy.
You
It
know,
is bizarre.
it's so bizarre. I was just in Italy recently, and I was at a museum just down in Sicily, and seeing some of the ancients. They had a lot of Greek and some Egyptian stuff as well. Obviously, they're very close to there. And within the first hour of this museum, I had to sit down. I was beyond exhausted. I was abnormally exhausted. Didn't make any sense as to why I was so tired. And there were some interesting. They weren't cone-shaped tools, but they were again in this realm of stone tools and interesting shaped stones that are absolutely emitting different forms of energy. And when artifacts are handled unconsciously, which most of them are, because most people have no idea what they're actually touching and handling, they have effects. And I was convinced that I was having my energy just zapped out by what some of these artifacts in this museum. And it's just so fascinating to see the heat signatures, because I actually hadn't seen that image before, where it's so clearly obvious that there is, in science, as we call it, a phenomenon happening. There's something happening here that a regular stone doesn't do that. And what I think is really interesting that you hit on with the stone circles, Michael, and this is something that kind of goes into ancient civilizations all across the planet, is the functionality of the stones and the structures. There is, like you mentioned at one point, it's almost like they're conscious, almost like they're alive. And when I went to Egypt the following year after seeing you in South Africa, I went to Egypt the next year. And when I was there, it was like that times 1,000, like the Great Pyramid, the Serapeum and all these other places that are thousands of years old, likely built over even older places. These structures are alive. And not only that, they have very, very profound effects on our consciousness. I was wondering if you could speak to that. And also, I know in South Africa, there's a very powerful site called Adam's Calendar. And myself included, everyone that goes into this has an experience that I've talked at length about my experience. And I wonder if you could just speak to like the consciousness of these structures.
Yeah. So I've already mentioned that you brought it up, the cymatics. This is all about sound, resonance, and frequency. Remember, the Bible. I always joke about this. I often joke about saying that the opening phrase of the Bible is a crash course in quantum mechanics. It says, "The Spirit of God moved over the waters," and and first of all, you got to go, okay, well, nothing has been created yet. Nothing has been created. And yet the Spirit of God is moving over water. How is it possible for water to exist when God hasn't even created the heavens and the earth? So that always puzzled me. I now have a very different take on that, which we probably won't have time to go into. But, and then it says, and then God said, let there be light. It's really important to understand the sequence of that, of those events. When I said earlier, when the sound moves faster than the speed of light, this is where you start to realize. So this is all connected, all to do with under the comprehension of sound, resonance, and frequency. God said, let there be light. So the spoken word or of the creator, the vibration and resonance of the spoken word or thought and consciousness that created the vibrational resonance, which manifests into toroidal fields, torus toroidal fields, that are balanced toroidal fields, moving this way and that way, which are magnetic fields. And moving magnetic fields create electromagnetic fields, which is light. So it tells us very clearly that sound and sound resonance and frequency is a precursor to light, is the creation that the resonance and the vibrations creates magnetic fields, and those moving, vibrating, pulsating toroidal magnetic fields, which are balanced magnetic fields. It's a perfectly balanced torus. Unlike this torus that I've showed you here, this is half a magnetic field because it creates energy. It sucks from the one side, pushes it to the other side. But if you have two of those facing each other, pushing energy towards each other, that's when you get what's known as the accretion disk at the center. There's a galaxy, perfect example of a balanced toroidal field, pushing from one side, both sides, and you've got at the center where the galactic disk is, not the galactic ball, the galactic disk. It's very important, like the solar disk and galactic disks. And that's what we'd call a balanced toroidal field. Like, this is quite a famous image now. This is just a giant galactic torus. You can see the energy going from the top, spiraling clockwise towards the center, and again clockwise from the other side. And where they meet in the middle, that's where you got the 0 point, where so many people talk about the 0 point and they don't know what they're talking about. So once we understand toroidal fields, you can explain everything in creation. And that phrase in the Bible, God said, let there be light, is a perfect example, and the crash course in quantum mechanics, where the primordial resonant frequency that created everything in creation, but starting with light. So now you got sound and light that combine, and the combination of that together with consciousness starts to manifest physical forms. And you can see that when you put sound on a metal plate, sand on a metal plate, but you put sound frequency, and you start getting these beautiful stone circles. Like, every stone circle is a beautiful cymatic pattern. Everyone is unique, represents a frequency that comes out of the ground at that specific point. And some of them, like I said, are like magnetrons. They are magnetron-shaped stone circles, which tells us that these guys were generating huge amounts of energy. And so now if you combine cone-shaped tools, torus stones, and magnetrons all working together, my God, whoever built these stone circles had the fundamental knowledge of generating energy, focusing energy into Caesar beams, and being able to use that to manipulate everything and anything. So the way I understand Caesar technology, and before I even go there, this is just to show you how in the most recent modern days, this is in 2017, this guy's name is Henrik Halter. He won the Saab Award for Science. And the Saab Award is a very big award every year. It's like the Nobel Prize especially in the aviation and military areas. And he won an award for discovering the most powerful antenna ever. It was called the phase ray antenna. And all it is a bunch of cones on a metal plate. All right, so let this sink in, and you start to realize that advanced technology is not what we think it is. Advanced technology is the basic understanding how nature works, understanding toroidal fields, understanding how the spiral of the balance of the toroidal field creates a perfectly balanced magnetic torus, and where these two energies meet at the center, that's the 0 point. And Nassim Haramein, the guy who I gave that torus stone to, wrote a paper, I think it was 2008, at Arizona State University with another professor lecturer there, I believe she's still there, Elizabeth somebody, I forget her surname. And they wrote a paper together on the density of the vacuum, what they call the vacuum, which is the 0 point. And they show that the density of that 0 point at the center of the torus is infinite, infinite density. Now, in there lies the answer to all the questions that we have about creation. And the question is, how fast does light move through a specific medium? Well, when you put light through air, it moves through the density of air. When you put light through water, it slows down because the water is more dense. When you put it through a prism or crystal, it slows down, and we do the experiments. It shows you how the light slows down. And when you put light through a medium that is infinite, that is much denser, it stops and it doesn't move at all. So the denser the medium, the slower the speed of light. With sound, it's the converse effect. The denser the medium, the faster the speed of sound. Sound travels at 434 meters a second in air. It travels about 8 times, I think, faster in water, or 20 times, whatever it is, because water is more dense. So the question is, how fast does sound move in an infinitely dense medium? The answer is infinitely fast. Bingo. I hope that penny has dropped for a lot of your viewers right now.
Isn't it just fascinating, right? And this is where we get confused when we look into the past, because when the ancients were building with this technology in mind, and maybe not so ancient, look at the Gothic cathedrals around this world and the cone technology at the top of these. When you go down sometimes research rabbit holes, like looking into Tartaria and the idea of this lost civilization and lost technology, but of more recent times. It's the same kind of thing we come up against, which is just technology that doesn't align with the technology. Well, it doesn't align with the technology we have today, right? We just don't discuss it. And it's just not as like the fact that the scientist won this award, and he's talking about antennas that are cone shapes, and most people still probably haven't heard of that. And even though we know this all the time with technology that's groundbreaking, it for some reason doesn't make it to the news, because it's obviously going to upset.
Of course not, because news is all about politics and controlling us, and so it's shocking. It's shocking that it's even called news. It shouldn't be called news. I don't know what
Propaganda.
In fact, we shouldn't even have it. The news channels that exist today they're atrocious. I don't have words to describe how toxic they are for humanity, for us.
No, and it's been this way forever. Though, if it wasn't the news, it was maybe the religion at the time, or other modalities and places to oppress thought, right, and the perspective that the masses have on anything, because that's the way that we can control people. And on that note, Michael, I would love to then ask the question of who built these, who built this, who brought this technology, who discovered this technology. Was it us? Were it other entities? Who built the stone circle ruins? And who do you think was not at fault, but was I guess the one to bring this technology to planet Earth, if it is indeed brought to planet Earth? What's your perspective on that?
Well, it's still, I have some thoughts on it. Whether it's accurate or not, I don't know. And
it's hard
my
to know,
thoughts on this
obviously.
have shifted over the years. At one stage I was very convinced about certain things, and now it's possible, but I'm open to new information all the time. What I can tell you is that I now have concrete evidence that the stone circles were built many hundreds of thousands of years ago, and I only discovered that after I met you here in 2018, when I started to fly my own drone. January, February 2020, just before lockdown. And I could then fly my own drone and actually film what I wanted to film, what I was interested in, and focus on that. And that's when I suddenly discovered what I saw in photographs, 12, 13 years before that, when I first found the stone circles in 2007. And I found that some of the stone circles, they have these channels that we mentioned already, and they run down the hill and they run into a river, and then it comes out of the river, and the other side also runs down into the river. So I started to think. By then, I already knew that the stone circles were generating energy, and there were magnetic fields in there. And I was thinking, well, were they possibly sucking water from the river through activating the stone circles, creating magnetic fields that flow up the hill? So it sucks the water up the hill, because water is magnetic, and you can manipulate water with magnetic fields. It's not very magnetic, but it is. and so you could suck water uphill, and then maybe they released it at the top so they could irrigate the terraces that surround them where they were potentially growing food, which is quite possible because the terraces that hold it all together, it's like a giant spider's web, right? And and it didn't make any sense. Why would the channels run into the river? Well, in 2020, I solved that because it didn't make any sense to me until I realized when I started to see that some of the areas in the valleys, the stone circles run and the terraces run and they run through the valley and it continues through the valley. And then right next to it, there's another one where the walls and the channels and the terraces are washed away by a river that is formed and it washed away the walls and the terraces. And I suddenly realized, oh my God, the rivers or the stone circles are younger than the rivers. So the rivers have been here before the stone circles. Sorry. I'm getting the stone circles were here before the rivers formed. So they built the stone circles. There was no rainfall. And then at some stage, the climate changed. It started to rain. Rivers formed and they washed away the stone circles. So the stone circles are older than the rivers. So now we just got to determine how old are the rivers. And we'll have a more accurate date as to when they were built. So we know that they're very, very old.
And it's
So
it
I thought,
just, and sorry, Michael, just to quickly jump in here because this is interesting. This is a phenomenon that also happens in the ancient world a lot. Like in Egypt, as an example, a lot of the pyramids and structures in Egypt were, of course, and even mentioned in a lot of texts, they were built right beside the Nile. But when you go there now, the Nile's not there. It's
no,
much further away. So using geology is another fantastic tool. And I was there with Dr. Robert Schock, who's a geologist, and we're using geology to just redate things that are actually, it's a great methodology because once you start to do that, the dates, like you said, that you're going to start coming up with are astronomical, right?
yeah. And that sits perfectly in line with the dates that we got for building Adam's calendar. Now, the information that I have is that Adam's calendar was built around 300,000 years ago, and that's it. And according to Zechariah Sitchin's translations, I found two translations that I interpret as referring to Adam's calendar. And the gold mines that are adjacent to Adam's calendar. So you already know, you can vouch for it, that there's not only a gold mine close to it, Sheba gold mine is right across the valley across. So Adam's calendar, for those that don't know, sits on the top of the mountain, on the edge. If you have an impact crater, a meteor strike, it pushes out and it creates this ring of mountains normally around it, the impact crater. So you got like this impact crater, and that's exactly what we have Adam's calendar on the edge of one of these ripples that were created through the impact crater. And you look over the crater, which is about 28 kilometers across, and there's Sheba Gold Mine, one of the most famous gold mines in the world today, and still what many people claim the richest gold mine by far. And there's a whole lot of reasons why I can say that, but we don't have enough time to go into that. When you got veins of solid jelly-like gold oozing out of the veins, that's there still today. One of the best kept secrets in South African gold mining industry. Um, and Adam's calendar itself is on top of a gold mine, because we went and we found the entrance to that gold mine that was then deserted and closed in 19, was it 23 or 26 or around there?
Yeah, a long
So
time ago.
they mined it for about 30 years or so, and then they shut it down. Why would they shut it down? Because there's still plenty of gold. There's no shortage of gold in that rock. And I think the conclusion that we all reached, well, I certainly reached, is that there must have been some supernatural activity that made them leave the mine and get out.
There must have been more
So at
going
this
on.
stage,
Yeah.
yeah, at this stage, it seems that Enki, the Sumerian supreme deity, the god with a small g that led the Anunnaki in their quest for gold on Earth, and that's a whole nother thing that needs to be blown apart because I believe there's complete misconception and misperception and misinterpretations. And again, my opinion on that has shifted dramatically since even we last spoke to what I believe it is today. So I believe that the reason why Adam's calendar is on that ridge is because, yes, there was an impact from a meteor crater, but originally it was a lot smaller, much smaller than what it is today. And that's where Enki started the first Anunnaki gold mining on Earth in what they call the Deep Abzu, where they discovered all the rich gold. And there are two areas, two references in Zechariah Sitchin's books that refer to Enki establishing his place in the Deep Abzu, where they set up the gold mining, and he built his and Adam's calendar was built. He built what is a place of observing 40 Shar after arriving on Earth. And if you do the numbers based on Sitchin's work, 40 Shar would put it at around 300,000 years ago. So that's just incredible. That's when suddenly humanity seems to appear from our genetic studies, right? So humanity suddenly seems to emerge. The first anatomical humans, somehow related to us, seem to emerge around 300,000 years ago. That's really interesting. And that's where Enki established Adam's calendar. And this is what makes it interesting, that's it's in line with Great Zimbabwe, which is exactly north, and the Great Pyramid of Giza, which is, if you extend the line from Adam's calendar through Great Zimbabwe, you'll land up at the Great Pyramid of Giza. This is not a coincidence. This is definitely by design. Right? So these are all very important bits of information that when you string it together, you realize that the Anunnaki had somehow a hand in this, that they may not be the architects of the stone circles, but they certainly were the architect of Adam's calendar, which was most likely a powerful machine to generate energy for the gold mining, but also potentially a wormhole or a portal to beam up the gold, to get rid of the gold or take it up wherever they wanted the gold. I used to joke about it in my lectures, so they bring the gold from the valley, from the crater, bring it up and put it in Adam's calendar and say, right, where would you like it, Scotty? Beam up the gold. And yeah.
And isn't that just wild, right? You look at a stone circle and you're like, yeah, this is a portal technology. And of course, what's happening more and more now, especially with disclosure and ET disclosure, UFO disclosure happening in the States a lot more now, is that we're seeing that, yeah, the government actually had full knowledge of these ancient sites being these potential stargates, portals, things like that. And then you go down that rabbit hole, and it's absolutely fascinating. This is another thing with and I want to just quickly ask you one more question, Michael, before we wrap this up. But we talked about Egypt. We talked about how it aligns perfectly with Adam's calendar. I remember leaving after Egypt. I looked at the map and I realized that I had just done two major sacred site tours that were perfectly in line with each other. And I had profound experiences at both of them. And it was fascinating. The places that I had those experiences specifically was Adam's calendar, when we were meditating in it, but then also when I was in the King's Chamber in the Great Pyramid of Giza, doing a little, leading a chant with some people and having psychedelic experiences there. It was pretty incredible. And I just wanted to get, because of specifically with your research and your niche, Michael, I wanted to get your perspective on the pyramids in general that we see around the world. Now, I know probably different ones, like a step pyramid versus the flat-sided pyramid, might have different functionality, but what is your take on the pyramids, these ancient pyramidal structures? I think we might even have some buried in South Africa because we find them global. What do you think they are? Really,
Well, there's no doubt that every pyramid that's been built, just like every stone circle, is an energy generating device. So that you've got to, if you're not comfortable with that, then don't even bother studying pyramids. Just go away, have a nice life. Don't try and prove that they're something that they're not, because the moment you build a pyramid, you're creating an energy generating device, an energy generating, an energy storage device. And that pyramid shape probably has other capacities that we haven't even thought about or discovered or can imagine. And it's all to do with a lack of higher consciousness that we're still striving for. But understanding what the stone circles are, understanding what the temples of Egypt are. So all the giant temples in Egypt are giant, circuit boards. I showed that long ago already, 2012. I was showing that in my lectures, that the temples in Egypt and Sumeria and the Persepolis, Egypt in Iran, in the ancient Iran and Persia, what was then called Persia, there are dozens and dozens of these ancient temples with these pillars that are just the giant energy circuit boards. Just like the stone circles are energy generating devices, They built them in Egypt with these pillars and whatever they were doing, I don't know. And then you got the obelisks, obviously, the antenna. They were either bringing energy from the sky or pushing energy up into the sky from these energy generating circuit boards. They vibrate, they pick up the energy from the earth. The pillars vibrate, they amplify it. And I don't know what they use it for. I have no idea. Maybe they, and the pyramids are the same thing. So pyramids, every pyramid is an energy generating machine. And all those different chambers inside the pyramids are resonant cavities that amplify those frequencies. So they would be built on harmonic scales with respect to each other, because everything has to be in perfect harmonic resonance so that it amplifies and creates more energy. Whether it was shooting energy up into the sky, who knows? I don't know. But, for me, the really interesting discovery lately about those giant columns going down below the pyramid, that just supports everything I've been saying for years and years, that it's a giant energy generating device. And if indeed they are those giant pillars that are going down, those would be the sources of resonance and picking up the deep earth resonant frequencies and channeling it up into the pyramid that sits on top of the surface of the earth, and then possibly amplifying it there through the beautiful the chambers inside it, amplifying it, and then potentially shooting it up into the sky. I don't know. That's an image that is very strongly imprinted in my mind. And we know this because Samas Managic in Bosnia they've measured the very strong energetic beam of, I think, was it 24 or 48 hertz? 48 hertz that comes out of the top of the Bosnian pyramid. They measured it many times. It's not even questionable. Anyone that still argues with it, go away, have a nice life, don't bother us. So this is just spectacular. So what we do know is that all these ancient sites, from Borobudur to Angkor Wat, to the stone circles, to the pyramids, to Stonehenge, to Saksai Huaman, that is a spectacular example of a circuit board on top of a mountain. All of these ancient sites are energy generating devices. We just don't know what the hell they were using all this energy for. What I have concluded is, as far as the stone circles, because the stone circles, this is my domain. I'm the only person in the world that is actually researching and has researched and done this work and published this work. No one else has done it, not our universities, nobody else. So I guess I'm the authority on this. And if that sounds arrogant, so be it. If you have more information, come and share it, and, claim your stake your claim, whatever. And so we know that the stone circles were built at a time that there was no rainfall, because we now know that the rivers had formed after the stone circles. So I'm starting to think, and this information actually came out of this AI information 2 days ago. That's how fresh it is. That suggests the same things. That the stone circles somehow had an effect on the global climate. So it was some terraforming, geoengineering. It changed the climate of the world so that it started to rain more, and changed the climate around the world. And that I find fascinating, because when the stone circles were built, they were built in areas that was just grassland. They didn't build them among trees. It was just grassland, and that's where they put them. And then when it started to rain, the climate changed quite dramatically and quite quickly. And now millions of stone circles are in areas where you can't even see them from aerial photographs, because they're covered by trees. And especially in Southern Africa, we got those beautiful umbrella trees, these umbrella trees. So they cover them perfectly. You can't see them from aerial photographs. But when you walk under the trees, you go, oh my God, there's stone circle walls everywhere. So that's how quickly the climate then changed. And we now know that the stone circles were built when there were no trees, and now the climate has changed dramatically. So potentially to change the atmosphere, to change make the world more habitable. And maybe that's what it was. Maybe some beings came here. They found the earth, but it was all barren with deserts and wasn't really habitable, not enough water. So they built the stone circle structure down here, because it was mostly grassland, and they just left it to do its thing. And it changed the climate of our planet to make it more habitable and formed the rivers and the lakes and the oceans and whatever.
It's incredible, Michael. I appreciate all that, and it's so interesting. You know, you look at the research of people like John Burke, who were going to sacred sites and doing very standard scientific measurements of just energy and electricity influxes inside the temple pyramidal complexes, outside, and so on and so forth. At different parts of the day, there would be different spikes, and they were always very consistent. The other thing that he did in his research was show the growth of seeds and crops, and it was always like 4 to 10x higher yields in crop growth and seed propagation and all this other stuff when near these sites. So I think what I've also kind of on top of what you were saying, what I feel that these devices, these pyramids, these structures were likely used for, and maybe some had different purposes, but one, they're multidimensional, multifunctional, I think. And two is that they really just almost in a way of like recognizing our planet as a living organism, just enhance the organism. So it enhances human physicality and life. It enhances Earth, Gaia life. It enhances everything around it basically, and just amps the frequency of everything so that it's more hospitable and just obviously a place that life can thrive. So it's far more complex. Obviously, it's something that we want to get into more, and maybe we'll do another episode someday on that. But to wrap things up today for our episode, I'd love to talk, and this is what I was saying at the beginning of the episode, where we can talk all about this amazing stuff, but ultimately, if we don't ground it into something we can kind of take with us today and to take into our future, it's more just fun information and entertainment at that point. So what Michael's been able to do is take all this fantastic information and create more of an action plan. And why don't you just tell us a bit more about Ubuntu, Michael, and what you're doing now, especially today, because today in 2025 and onwards, we need situations and organizations like Ubuntu more than ever.
Well, we need solutions for the problems that we face. The world is screwed up. We can talk about this ancient knowledge and ancient civilizations till the cows come home, but how is that going to benefit us? So that's, I discovered that a long time ago already, while I was writing Slave Species of God, when I discovered the true origins of money and how money was created 4000 BC. That it could be even further back in time, because we don't really have dates on the Sumerian texts that tell us where the first, royal bloodlines came down. And then these first priest kings started to create the first forms of money in little clay tablets and dish them out from their temples and give people clay tablets for their gold and their silver, and that in essence became the first form of money, and they started to rule the world, and then the Rothschilds perfected that system, and we know what the global financial systems do today. So I started to realize that the world is messed up. There are no political solutions, because politics is a world of opposition. The moment you go into politics, you oppose everybody else. You want to impose your views and oppose everyone else. So through politics, we're not going to find solutions. Solutions are going to come through cooperation, collaboration, working together for the greater good of our community. And so already in 2005, I started to talk about a new social structure that we need to come up with. And I came up with a word called contributionism, a system that's unlike any other system, a system in which we contribute towards the well-being of our community, and which means well-being of my family, my loved ones, and myself. And if we all work together, cooperate, then we'll have solutions for everything. But unfortunately, through so-called democracy and capitalism, the opposite is happening. So we compete against each other. We try and destroy each other. The one big company tries to control everything and take out all opposition. So instead of using our collaborative skills for the greater good, through capitalism, and I'm talking about cold, brutal capitalism, the dog eat dog, the rat race capitalism, it destroys everything, and it leaves one dictator kind of leader in each industry, right? That is not a solution. So I started to develop this philosophy of contributionism. That then got related to the African philosophy of Ubuntu, which is, I am what I am because of who we all are, where we share and take care of each other in our communities. And that then in 2016 eventually became the One Small Town initiative, and which has now grown rapidly around the world. And And through understanding our history, understanding our past, and learning from what has not worked for us, finding solutions of what can work for us by cooperation, through cooperation and collaboration. So the One Small Town initiative is just grown from strength to strength. We are literally standing in the doorway of a global explosion with small towns all over the world adopting our model. We've created our own blockchain. We have a very powerful platform with our own private membership association, NFT tokens, through the Infinity token. So our members get rewarded through their 3 hour contributions towards their community. It is a beautiful system that cannot be crashed. It's taken a long time to get here because it is a big idea. It is not a bunch of people occupying a piece of land and growing some food. We're not doing intentional communities. We are doing something much, much bigger than that. And what we do is we understand that you can't fight the system because the system was created not to be overthrown through through the banks, the legal systems, the judges, the et cetera, et cetera. So through the One Small Town initiative, we literally allow the people, give the people the tools, the people of small towns, the tools through our blockchain and the entire structure that we've put together to be able to cooperate, collaborate in a very managed situation where no one can steal or rob anyone else or backstab or run off with investors' money or et cetera, et cetera. So we all cooperate, collaborate, use the blockchain to make sure that everything is done transparently, that we start businesses that we co-own as a community and we make profits, and those profits are then shared with our community. They don't get distributed to shareholders in private companies. So we don't wait for companies to create jobs for us. We start our own companies and businesses and create businesses and work for ourselves. And that's in essence what One Small Town is all about. We have just developed our first new technology, very advanced breakthrough technology in the recycling area. I'm not going to go into details, but if you go to our website, you can read all about it. We're about to launch this technology. Even today, even this morning, the meeting that I had was the most exciting and inspiring meeting with my partners about this technology. It's running, it's beautiful. It just, purrs like a kitten when you switch it on. And so we basically can recycle all the plastic and all the rubber pollution in the world. We never ever have to put anything in any landfill again, and that goes for polystyrene as well, or styrofoam. So this is a beautiful system. It provides all the solutions from energy to healthcare to everything you can imagine. And that's our first technology. And this is about to start to go into production so that it can help support our One Small Town offices in every country around the world, and provide some funding for those initiatives. So it's a huge, huge breakthrough moment for us, because without money, it's very difficult to launch initiatives like this. You can try, but sooner or later you're going to run into a wall and it's going to become difficult. So the more money you have, the easier it is to get these things off the ground. And eventually, the more successful the One Small Town initiative becomes, the more our members will realize that we actually don't need money. We just need each other, because money does nothing. People do everything. We do everything. Money just often gets in all the time. Money gets in the way between us trying to do something because we don't have enough money. So sooner or later, we're going to turn this thing around where in our One Small Town communities, we start doing things and building things and growing things and, having food security and technology and so forth and security, where we've got our own internal NFT with which we reward ourselves. And we realize that we actually don't need the money, but we use the money to get us to the point where we no longer need the money. So it's about to explode. Once we launch this first technology, which we're doing as we speak, we move on to developing the next technology, and you can read all about it on our website, onesmalltown.org. We've just launched our second. The Infinity token is the main sort of reward system for our members. So for every 3 hours you contribute towards your community, you get an Infinity token in your digital wallet. You can then send that token to any other One Small Town member around the world instantly for free. Doesn't cost you anything. So it becomes our own private means of exchange. It's what Bitcoin promised to be and failed us dramatically. So the infinity token has literally replaced what Bitcoin could never become. And Bitcoin just became a tool of enrichment. And now nobody's going to pay you in Bitcoin, right? Remember the early days? People would pay in Bitcoin and put on your invoice, I accept payment in Bitcoin. I did that and people paid me in Bitcoins and so forth. So Infinity token has replaced that, but it's a stable token. It cannot be crashed. You cannot lose your wallet and lose your Infinity tokens because it's part of a private membership blockchain, and it's an incredibly powerful system. So it's about to explode, and the technology is going to be there to help support it in every country that we launch. And then we'll just move on to other technologies that include, energy, water desalination, water purification, air conditioning, air heat, water heating, um, healing, all kinds of healing modules and healing products. This technology, we've got it lined up. It's just we don't want to do more than one technology at a time because then we will screw it up. So we have successfully launched the first one, and the future is looking incredibly bright at the moment. So join One Small Town. Go online, onesmalltown.org. Sign up as a member. Doesn't cost you anything. You're not committing to anything. Just become a global member so that you can log in, you can check your digital wallet, buy some Infinity tokens so you've got them. And as this thing unfolds, it'll become more and more practical for us to start using the tools that we've created through our blockchain and our One Small Town platform.
That's beautiful, Michael. Thank you so much. And this is exactly what we need. We need people like you and initiatives like this, especially now more than ever. Where we were talking at the beginning of this episode about the news, and it's garbage in so many ways. And one of the things I hate the most about it is there's no solutions in it. It's just presenting problems constantly that aren't even maybe real half the time, but like they're just problems, problems, problems. What you're doing, this is a solution. This is a great solution among many, many others that are on this planet right now, ready to go. And to be honest, as you and I both know, the solutions have probably existed forever. The technologies have existed forever, but now at least finally we're coming to a point as a collective where we're just not waiting for the oligarchs, the elites, these people that have been leading the way and controlling us for so long. Or they're the powers that were. They aren't the powers that be anymore, and we are the powers that be. And I really believe that we're coming together now in unity. And, this is just the growing pains. But a lot of people I think are witnessing in the external world are the growing pains of raising consciousness. And what we need to go through is a little bit more chaos, a little bit more, it's going to get maybe a little worse before it gets better. But I feel it. I believe it. We're moving into a new paradigm. And it's
Yeah.
a beautiful place to be, right?
It is, like I said, One Small Town has really emerged out of or grown from the knowledge of ancient civilizations and realized that, hey, the solutions are very simple. Just on a note, just to maybe inspire people to try and imagine where this can go. And in your town, whatever little town or small town you live in, imagine a town of 10,000 people, and we all sign up as members. We, in essence, have created a powerful labor force. If each of us contributes 3 hours a week, that's all you got to do as a member. Contribute 3 hours a week. And the system is set up so nobody can cheat or claim they did and didn't. And so that's why it's taken a long time to set this up. As if each of our 10,000 members in our town contribute 3 hours a week, that gives us 30,000 hours of free labor. That's 120,000 hours of free labor a month. We've just turned our town into a powerful company with us as members starting our own businesses that we own, and we work in those businesses as a labor force. We've just become competition to any other company that's got 10,000 workers in their company and has to pay millions of dollars a month in salaries to those people. So we become a very powerful competitor to any multinational corporation. We can do anything we choose. We can start any kind of business, whether it's making laptops or bloody chips for advanced technology, or building bicycles or fridges and growing insane amounts of food, creating seed banks and food security. Anything we choose to do. If we just contribute 3 hours a week as members of One Small Town and set up properly run and managed businesses, if we as a community of 10,000 people, if we don't turn over at least $1 billion a year, we're doing something wrong. And I say that because if you compare, a company of 10,000 employees, those companies do, 20, 30, 50 billion dollars a year turnover. So if we as a community of 10,000 people don't turn over $1 billion a year, we're doing it wrong. So just visualize that and imagine how powerful our town becomes. And the One Small Town platform gives us the ability to all of that. So no one can cheat, no one can run away with the money, no investor loses their money if they invest into some of our businesses. And the majority, a minimum of 60% of every business we launch stays in our community. The profits from that are always funded back to our members. It's a very powerful, very simple, and very powerful system.
And that's onesmalltown.org, is that?
Yeah. onesmalltown.org. Yeah.
And then for everyone else who's obviously super interested in your research and your books and everything like that, Michael, where can they find all of that?
Well, just go to michaeltellinger.com. So that focuses more on the ancient civilizations. But you can get the links to all my books, but also go to Amazon because all my books are available on Amazon. As much as I don't like Amazon, it still provides the easiest solution for me. So I've got to use it, unfortunately, until we come up with a better solution. And hopefully, with One Small Town, we will come up with a better solution very soon.
Just about to say, we get the new and improved New Earth Amazon from Ubuntu
Yeah.
in the One Small Town. So that's amazing. So for everyone watching, listening, thank you so much for tuning into this episode. And absolutely, you got to check out Michael's work, his books, and probably most importantly, the One Small Town .org and the movement, of this incredible contributionism, this Ubuntu movement, where I'm sure all of you watching and listening can kind of feel where we're at right now. The pulse of reality currently is of change and is of moving into a very different system that looks nothing like we've ever seen before. Because it's brand new. We're not going to go back to anything that we've done either previously. We're going into a brand new paradigm where everything's going to get intermingled and it's going to look absolutely incredible and still something that I can't fully imagine because it's just so amazing. So
Just think about where we've come from, Chris. Where was I 20 years ago? Where was I 10 years ago? Where are we now? We are literally in the doorway, gateway to make this all a reality for anyone around the world can do this right now. How this happened, I don't know. If you can't see that this was divinely guided, well, I can see it very clearly that I've been divinely guided through all the turns and trials and tribulations and blood, sweat, and tears and moments of absolute despair, thinking that's it, I can't carry on anymore. And I've had many days like that. And then something happens, and then here we are. We're about to release the most advanced technology in the world that no one else has. We've got many other technologies. Any small town anywhere can join us and do this for themselves. It's crazy. How the hell did we get here? This is divinely guided. It's an idea whose time has come, and God has a very, very strong hand in this happening right now.
absolutely. Well, on that note, thank you for everything you do, Michael. And I just wanted to say on a personal level, thank you for being essentially my Eric Von Donigan situation in my life, just opening me up to all these incredible questions that we just skimmed the surface of today. And thank you so much for all your work. Thank you for coming on to the episode today and just taking some time out of your very busy schedule. So thank you so much. And thank you to everyone watching, listening to this episode of Ancient Mysteries Unearthed. We will catch you on the next episode. And until then, all the best.